Okay. To begin with, I wonder if I could just get you to tell me a bit about what kind of boy Casey was. He was 19 at the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Casey was a very loving child, and he also he loved family. And you know, every time you meet him, he always had that big bright smile. He had a beautiful smile, and you know, and he was just passionate for his family. And he was passionate about his friends, and he was passionate about school. And also, he was really smart. He was like a mathematician, very smart, and you know, just growing up, he was an easy kid. I never did have really ever had any problems with Casey, especially even in his adolescence. You know, he did need some cultivating and some coaching as a child, but as far as that, he was never a troublemaker. You know, he excelled in school. He loved his sisters, you know, his brothers, you know. I have an older son that they were very close, and then I have he has a younger brother that he was very close with. And you know, when growing up as a kid, he ran track real well. At the age of 4, I put him in track. He was very fast in that. He loved track. He loved sports. He loved basketball. Um, you know, you just can't say enough about him. He has so much potential, even up to the time that the incident happened with him being shot. The next day, he was going to finish up his enrollment in college. You know, he was going to school. He loved computers, and that's what he was going to school for, drafting in computers. So.
Where was he looking at going to school?
He was going to go to ITT,
okay.
Technical. He was offered to go there, and I mean, he just was so happy, excited about going back to school that spring. It was going to be spring for him, and he was just really excited about it, you know. And he was just looking forward to going to school. Is this a music? I think it is.
Had he, if I remember correctly, he'd recently graduated from high school?
Yeah, he graduated in 2000, the spring of 2007. He just finished high school. And at the time he was working in a Cherokee Baptist. He was working with me, and you know, and yeah, he was going to school. I mean, you know, he was working at the time.
Okay. Where did he go to high school?
He finished at Millwood High School.
Oh, okay. Do you remember how you found out about the incident?
You know, that night I got a call around. It was a little after 12 o'clock. I got a phone call from one of his friends who said, Miss Lisa, Casey has been shot. He's unresponsive, you know, and that's how we were able to find out through one of his friends that was at the party with him.
Was the club where he was that someplace he went a lot?
No,
because that club was like, it was a teen club one night, because he had like a 50s club the next night. It just was a, you know, I guess people just rented it out and did whatever they was doing.
Okay, so it wasn't like a regular place?
No, it wasn't a regular spot.
No. As a matter of fact, when he was, that evening when he was going, he just left a Millwood basketball game, because he really supported those, that school, and he still had friends there, you know, was still at the school. It was their senior year, so he still had friends there, and he would still go support them. And my younger son was with him. He took him to the ball game, and after the basketball game, he brought him back home, and he said, you know, he said, Mama, be ready. As he was leaving to go to the point, he said, Mama, I'm not gonna. He said, I'm just going in for 30 minutes just to show my face and just show my support and just to tell him happy birthday, because this young man was turning only 16. And I said, okay. And he said, and after that, because he worked, and he said after that, I'm just going home so we can be ready for tomorrow so we can go finish up his paperwork at the school. And I said, okay. And he said, Mama, be ready at 12. And I said, okay. And that was the last time we seen him up, walking and talking, at that time. So, uh, his intentions of going in was just going to be just very brief in and coming back out.
When you said be ready at 12,
that meant they said that we had to be at the school around about 12:30.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So he was gonna pick me up at 12 o'clock, and we were just gonna go from there back to the school to finish up his paperwork.
Okay. And instead, you got that call.
I got that call.
Do you remember what went through your mind?
It was just so. It was hard to process because they said that he was unresponsive and that his friend just didn't think he lived through it. And I said, you know what? I just told him, I said, he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be fine. Just calm down. And I asked, began to ask them, do you know what hospital they're taking him to? And at the time they said, I believe they're gonna take him over to OU Medical Center. And so I went in the room and I woke up my husband and I told him what had happened. And so we got dressed and went to the hospital. But at the time, I'm just, all the way to the hospital, I'm just still trying to have all of this to sink in. And because it was surreal. I just couldn't process it, that had happened. Because I just seen you. Just, what was it? It wasn't even 30 minutes. What was it? About an hour? Couple hours. Yeah, about hours. Yeah, it was a couple hours.
And he was up and around and fine.
Yeah, he was up and around fine, just in such a good mood. I don't know if you see my young daughter in here earlier, but he played, at the time she was 2.5, and he just played with her before he left, and and as usual, he joked with us, and he was just such in a good upbeat, when he left, and we just never would have thought that, by him going out that night, that was going to be our last time seeing him healthy and just,
When you arrived at the hospital, was he conscious?
When we arrived to the hospital, no, we checked in at the hospital, and they had the chaplain to come out, and they told us at the time that Casey was going to surgery, and they took us on the floor on the ICU unit in a waiting room. So
there's a lot of police.
Oh, it's a lot of police.
A lot of kids, teenagers, and a lot of teenagers. I remember them kind of shielding us. They took us, the immediate family, away because of what had happened. They didn't let anybody else up on the floor because it was still like an investigation going on, and this person hadn't been caught. So who's to say he wasn't in that crowd or whatever. So anyway, I remember they took us to a different route.
They took us
a lot of people.
Because it was a lot of the poor guys. But those young people were so good. They just sat in the waiting room. As soon as I got there, I should have said I didn't check in. First, I went to go check on everybody, and they were like, some was just crying, but they was at their best. I mean, they were at their best, and they just couldn't believe it. And then, when I did go check in, it was a lot of police officers back in admissions with some of the receptionists was in there, and I told them who I was, and these police officers put their hand on their guns, and I was like, hey, I'm here for peace. I said, I'm here for peace. I said, not war. I said, I'm here for peace. I said, I'm only here checking on my son, and it was one of the ladies. She really treated me nice, and that's when they went to go get the chaplain, and that's when they kind of hurdle us all together, and it was just only the media family and the ones I chose to go with me up on the floor, and it's supposed to be kind of a more secure place.
Okay. And what happened then?
And so we stayed, and we was there for what? We had.
We were there the rest of the night.
Well, we was there for the rest of the night till the doctors came out,
Right.
and they came out and told us. They said that Casey, they stopped counting bullets at 8. They stopped counting bullets at 8. One of the doctors told me, he said he's never seen such large bullets that they taken out. He had a bullet and was still enlarging in one of his lungs. He had one lung collapse. He got shot several times in his chest. He had one bullet to go underneath his arm and missed his heart a little bit. And then he had a bullet that went through his navel and came out of his rectum. He had some bullets that hit his leg. He had a fractured skull because when he hit the pavement, I guess it fractured his skull, because they told me it was such a high velocity of a gun. He had a broken arm. They believed his leg was broke. He was just in a really bad shape. But the doctors also told me, just to give you some comfort, they said when he arrived to the hospital, he didn't have any blood in his body, nor did he have water. And I really didn't have a pulse at all. And a nurse said, I guess they was going to pronounce him dead, but they said he opened up his eyes and looked at all of them. And they said that he began to act like he was trying to get up off the table, and then the doctor said, let's take him under. He's a fighter. So that was very remarkable. Today, they just can't understand why he survived that, what he survived, And, when Casey was a young child, when he was around about, I noticed when he was around about 11 months, his chest began to kind of bulk up a little bit. And when he was about 2 years old, it began to even bulk even more. And I remember when I took him to his pediatrician, I began to ask questions, why is his chest so bulky like that? And the doctor said, well, you don't see it all the time. They said he has so much calcium built up, and it just landed in his chest. So they said that as he get older, he will grow into it. His body will form into it. Okay. So his chest, when you hit it, was like a brick.
Oh.
And so when he got shot that night, those bullets had a hard time because it was hitting up against that bulk of that chest. Because his chest cavity was so hard. And that helped him some to survive some of his injuries that he had. It's because the doctor said that his chest wall was so hard.
How long did he make it?
He lived 12 days. He lived 12 days. When they had him, on 100% oxygen, let's say like for 4 days, and before he left here, he was almost breathing on his own.
Oh, wow.
He started showing a lot of good signs, but his blood kept clogging, and his kidneys stopped functioning. But he fought. He fought hard, and even when you went in there, it was like a peace always over him. He didn't, his face or his expression never did show a lot of stress. And when me and he had a friend that we went in there to visit him, we was you know, his friend began, we were always prayed over him, so we were praying with him. And he said, Casey, he said, God is just going to have us traveling one day. And Casey did like that.
Mm.
He shook his head. And then he said, Casey, God got you in the best position. You just lying there relying on him. And he said, and he shook his head. And we talked to him for a little while later. And those was the only signs that he made. After that, he didn't make any more. But he started one day, I guess like on his 9th day, he started having seizures.
Mm.
And when I went to go visit him in the hospital, I was met by the doctor, and he told me, he said that I don't know why Casey's having seizures. And he said, but when I began to look in his chart, I noticed a nurse didn't give him his high blood pressure medicine. And his blood pressure started crashing, and it made him go to start having seizures. So from then on, he would just have trembles, you know, some days. But he kept fighting, and I always tell people, whether you believe me or not, on his 12th day, which was February the 20th, before I left, I had a dream. And in my dream, the phone rings, and I answer it. And I hear somebody on the other line clearing their throat. And I said, Casey? He said, yeah, it's me. And I said, you okay? Are you up? He said, Mama, he said, I'm tired. He said, I'm tired now, and you're going to have to let me go. He said, I'm ready to go. He said that, I seen the other side, and I'm ready to go home. And he told me, he said, it's beautiful there. He said, but I'm ready. He said, but you got to be the one to let me go. And I kept on, and I was trying to respond back, and he said, Mama, he said, I'm not coming back. And I said, no. And then all of a sudden, it's like in my dream, it's like the phone went dead. So I hear it, and I jumped up, and I went to the hospital because it was so surreal. And I said, he's awake. And then we get to the hospital. So when I got to the hospital, they were bringing him out of his room. The doctor's orders was to have him to have a brain scan to see how much function of the brain was working, to see was he brain dead or not. And as he was coming, as they was pushing him on out to go get his to the ultrasound to go get brain wave, I could hear him in my ear and said, let me go. And so by then the doctors took me, my family, we went in a room and for the doctors to talk to us about Casey. And he said, by the state of Oklahoma, he said, your son is brain dead, and we're going to have to take him off life support. And I kept on saying, well, I'm his mother. You cannot take him. So I'm not ready for him to be taken off of life support. And they said, he no longer belongs to you. He belongs to the state of Oklahoma. And by law, physicians do have power that they feel like that if they know that the patient tests are ran and they find out that patient do not have any brain waves, we can declare, we can take them off the machine. And, you know, he said some more things. So, of course, we got up and we went back to Casey's room and we began to talk, and we just began to call the family to come. And at the time, his father lived in Tulsa, and they were on their way to see him. And it's just the same thing. And we all got to talk to him. And I began to talk to Casey. I just let him know that he was the best gift that any parent could have. I told him I was so fortunate to have him as my son, and that he has never brought me any shame, and he has never brought any shame in my home. And I had such a privilege to raise such a man like him, and that he weathered every storm. that he weathered, that he got to finish high school that many didn't, that I did not get a phone call and said that my son had died, and I got to tell him that, and I told him that he conquered 9 bullets, 8 bullets. I said, Casey, you even conquered 8 bullets, and you still didn't live. You didn't even die on your first bullet. And then, you know, we just talked to him, and then I said, now, I receive you back into the arms of God, and he flatlined and he died. And the hardest thing was that he ended up dying on his daddy's birthday.
Oh.
He died on his father's birthday. So it's been very hard. I mean, you know, that we have healed a lot, but it's still so hard. You could feel his presence is gone, you know. You know, I wake up almost every day and say, you know what, I didn't get to see him on his 20th birthday. I didn't even get it's a bloodline that's cut off that I will not get a generation of people to come through that bloodline. You know, I will not get to, because we're about family. I won't even get a daughter-in-law from him. I won't even get any children. So it affected the people living now, and it's going to affect the people that is going to be born into our family. You know, that they got to miss out on a great person. And he was very close to my husband. They were very close.
While this is going on, obviously there's a police investigation happening, and did they tell you much about what was happening there?
When we that night when we first got the detective that came out, he was from the assault unit. He was fresh. He hadn't even been. I think he hadn't even been in the department very long. I just couldn't understand. They did put some seasoned detectives on Casey's case after he passed away. And it's not an investigation going on now.
Right.
It's just over in a cold case. I try to call and try to see what's going on, what they're doing, and the only thing I always get told is if somebody come up, if I hear anything, that I can always call them. You know.
I understand that the charges were dropped. Is that
The
right?
charges was dropped. It was dropped against a young man named Brian Manuel, and the young lady that started the fight, because it was a fight that broke out in the club that night, that came in and did the maiming. I think in 2000. Oh well, anyway, at the time she was a juvenile. I guess a couple of years later, I think it was like in 2010, she got brought up on some more charges, and at the time the homicide detectives got wind that she was back in the system and went back and tried to talk to her and try to make it, the state was going to make an offer with her if she could just identify the shooter, which she did. They had Mr. Manuel in jail for a couple of months, and she started getting threats while she was still in jail, so she didn't want to be the state witness anymore. So since that happened, they had to let him go.
That had to feel
That
awful.
was a blow. That was a blow. We were called out because they was getting ready to start his trial. And anyway, that was, we were called down to the DA, to the DA's office. You know, they said it would just really hurt the case if they did find out and somebody was a witness one day and named that he was the shooter. And by then, you know, if they would have let that go on and then she would have went to trial and got up there as being a witness and said, you know, I don't know if that was him, they could have really had the case. So it was just best to let him go. But it was a blow for our family. It was just a blow for everybody at the time, you know.
Do you remember how you got that news? Is there a phone call or?
Yeah, it was a phone call. I got a phone call from the DA's office. It was from the DA's secretary. Told us that we needed to be to come down to the courthouse, and the DA would tell us from there that why we were there and why were they releasing him.
What went through your head when you heard that?
When we heard that he was going to be that he was going to be let free to go, like I said, it was just it was hurtful. It was just like that night started all over with us again, you know. Just the agony and the pain of it, that this person gets to walk the street again, that the evil that was done towards my son, you know, and there, you know, you had him and now he's gone again, you know. It was just a letdown. But I can understand the DA's part of it too, but it was just a letdown again.
For, you know, thankfully most people don't have to go through something like you've gone through. What, for somebody who hasn't been in that position, it's probably kind of hard to understand what it feels like to not to get justice.
Right.
What does that feel like?
Not to get justice, you know, it's really hard to put in words. It's just that, you know, just for example, you can look at TV and you see all these other cases getting resolved, and you thinking like, man, mine is just look like it's just so easy can be done, but it's not. And it's just like you look. You know, you look and you be like, you know, when is my turn is going to come for justice, you know? And every day you go on, and then as a parent and as a mother, you know, it's already heartbreaking. You want there to protect your child, and just to think that somebody is walking around. And, you know, when we did go to the hospital and see my son, you know, his chest is just busted up with all these bullets and the injuries that he suffered from. And then to let know that this person that done this, and you know, you feeling like, how can I help it? You know, what can I do, you know, to bring justice to my son? You know, it's like I'm screaming loud, but nobody is listening.
Yeah, you don't get no support from like
the
people that should, you know, with all these cameras and technology, somebody saw something, but this mentality that this younger generation has of not snitching, not telling, that's what's tearing up the community. I mean, you need to tell something to get these killers off the street so it won't happen to other families. And that's the whole deal, is that you look, you know, like we see a lot of his classmates. They come by when they have children and stuff, and they're showing us that, you know, they just had a child and they got married and different things, and you know, Casey was a classmate. But this is not going to happen for Casey. And maybe, you know, this person may know something out there or don't know something, but you need to tell, you know, the truth, what you know, so we can come to some kind of, you know, comfort for our family. Like, you know, because we meet people every day. Who's to say we're not meeting the killer? We don't know, because he's still out there in the community raising havoc. If he did it once, he's probably, you know, if you can kill a person like that, then, you know, at any time you can strike. He's a threat to the community, the police, you know, school. Just it's the community needs to get more involved, and if you know something, you need to come forward, and you know, we need to police our own communities, and that would help a whole lot, just right there. You know.
And not only and build on what he's saying too, and then when you call the detectives, they're supposed to be on the case too, but when you just hear, you know, if you know, once I was told, is your people, and I'm like, who's my people, you know, but when you get told that, well, as soon as you hear it, I mean, I'm not calling in on his job and say he ain't gonna be at work,
right.
But when you call in and you say, well, as soon as you hear something, just let us know. It's not like, a lot of times it's just like a lot of effort is put in it, you know. When it happened, I'm asking, you know, the detectives was on the case. I asked them, I said, did anybody look for cameras on buildings might have seen this? No, we didn't look. I did my own police work. I just went up and down and tried to find business with cameras, you know, and I said, you know, it is some business that have cameras, you know, on, you know, especially like what my husband said, there's so much technology now.
How, when you heard that somebody had been arrested, was this somebody you knew? Had you heard that?
No, this person didn't even know my son.
Oh, okay.
They didn't even know each other. When we heard it, I was really happy. I was happy, but always in the back of my mind, I couldn't celebrate that victory. I didn't want to celebrate a victory until everything was done and over with, and to really make sure that this was the right person. You know, I didn't want to do an early celebration.
Do you think it was the right person?
I really do think, yeah, I do. I really do. I really do think it is the right person. Because I know that when some of the people kept, when they were in the waiting room, some of them did keep on, you know, throwing his, I think he went by some other name and they were throwing his name out there. But it always goes back to the witness, you know.
How have things been different for your family since then?
His siblings, they are just, even though it's been that long, they've just not kind of, a couple of my kids took it very hard. My younger son, you know, sometimes we are still kind of worried about him because even if you bring up his name, he'll just walk out of the room because he was so close to him. He really shut down a whole lot. Even by you guys being here, he left. I mean, it's still kind of really hard for him. My oldest son, you know, he'll talk about him every once in a while, but, you know, you have to mention it for them to say something. For me and my husband, it's been tough. Our whole family has been to counseling. And, you know, it has, we're trying to live after a tragedy. It's trying to live without that missing person in your life again, you know. It's just been very hard, emotionally, you know. Just like next month would be the anniversary of everything over again, with his death, by him being shot, his death. I think the first time I visited a cemetery is probably because when we had his service, I never did go to the funeral side. He's not buried here. He's buried. We're from Tulsa, so his body went back to Tulsa. I couldn't do it. But, you know, it's not a day that it goes by that I don't think about him. You know, some days are easier than others.
This might seem like an odd question, but do you remember what the next Christmas was like?
Oh man, it was hard because the last holiday that we celebrated with him was 2007 Thanksgiving. And then 2008 Christmas, it was hard. Oh, did we even celebrate it? Did we even celebrate Christmas in 2008?
I can't remember.
It was hard because he was always the life of everything. He brought so much life when he was around. He just hugged and kissed on you and just joked with you. He had a great sense of humor, and his laugh was always loud. And, you know, if Casey comes, he's going to be the life of the places because it's just how he was. But he taught me about family. He loved family. He didn't like people arguing. He was just a bridge builder. He just bring you everybody. When he died, he brought so many people connected in him. Just so many people just became close because of him. He was always, ever since a little kid until the day he died. So it was hard. It was very hard.
Do you still hear from, I think you mentioned that some of his friends still come by with kids and things. Do they still talk about him?
Oh, they love them. They talk about him. Some of them, he had one friend to finish school to become a school teacher because he said that he always thought about Casey, always teaching them and always, encouraging them. Some of them went on just doing a really good with their lives. Yeah, they bring, like my husband was saying, we've been at his best friend's wedding. He had one friend that named their child after him, and because when his friends had went to college that fall of 2007, and some of them went out of state. He had one friend out of state, was on a track, was in track, and he needed track shoes. And he didn't know how he was going to get them, and Casey said, hey, I'm going to overnight them to you tomorrow. He had one friend that, they didn't have food while they were really out of state. Casey sent them money because he was working, and he was sending them money. He said, hey, man, he said, whatever you do, because I heard him on the phone, he said, whatever you do, you're not coming out of school, you're going to finish. And he had financial papers in his car after high school. He would give them to his friends. He would have them. I mean, he was all about improving your life. And he would tell his friends, you're going to stay in college, you're going to hang in there, you ain't coming out. He said, I'm here for you. I have to send some money, And he always encouraged his friends. And like I said, my younger son, so he was getting ready to turn like 15. He said, hey, man, he would come and pick him up, because Casey wasn't living when he was living with, and in 2007 he was living with my older son, and he would come get my baby son and his baby brother and say, hey, you're getting ready to be a man. You're getting ready to go fill in some applications on Fridays. He would pick them up and take them to go get job applications. He said, you're becoming a man now. You got to learn how to take care of yourself. A man always keep money in his pocket. A man works. And right after he got shot, my son ended up getting a job. I mean, that's just the way he was. People always came for him advice, and every time we would look at, sometimes at night when he was living with us, we'll wake up in the morning, be somebody in the house, and they said, well, Mama, he didn't have a place to stay. Are they license cut off? Or, they hungry. And he would have my husband give him extra money to take to school so he can feed somebody. Yeah.
There's a level of maturity there that you don't see in every teenager.
Yeah, it is. He had a level of maturity. He really did. I mean, even at his funeral, it was packed with, it was so adverse there. It had a mixture of every color that you can think of there, and there was a lot of ministers, and it was a lot of testimonies up there. Tell them something about testimonies.
Oh, there's a lot of people there.
A lot of older people, too.
Because he worked, and all his co-workers were there, and they were a lot older than him because he was only 19. He had a lot of co-workers that was older than him.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still see a lot of his friends, like I said, they still come by, and sometimes they'll be thinking about him, so they'll come by here, to sit and talk with us, tell us stories that, things that happened while they were in school that we didn't know of because, kids.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess they be missing him, and they just come by.
We had one young man there, he brought his family to the funeral, and he was around about 10. And we were asking him, he said, I'm here because Casey was walking down the street when they was going up to his friend's house, and he saw me outside at my basketball goal, and he came over to the store talking to me. He said, start playing basketball with me, and gave me some techniques of how to play ball. And I was like, wow. In my job at Interis, we had turkey toss, what we call turkey toss. This was when the employees get turkeys, and Casey's department were handing them out to the employees, and at the time We had our CEO there, and he was helping them out, and he got to meet Casey, and he just really liked him. And at the time that Casey got shot, on the second day, I got a phone call from his secretary, the CEO's secretary, and said that at the time that the CEO was very distraught about hearing about Casey, and she said he's out of town. She said he's coming back to town. When he heard, he said he was so disturbed, he's canceling making his trip short, and he's coming back. And he said whatever that family needs, you make sure they get it. And the funeral cost wasn't a thing. Usually they give you half of it, they pay for everything.
Oh, wow.
And he said, make sure, and he gave me the most beautiful letter about him. And he told me, he said, when I met him, he said, I met him by his smile. And he said to sit there and to talk to him, he said he was so malleable, and he said he was the nicest young man. And he was telling me about the potential. And he, after Casey's funeral, and when I went back to work, they on the 8th floor. They called for me to come up to his office. And when I got to his office, he had tears in his eyes. And he said, your son impressed me so much. And he said, as long as you work here, whatever you need, you come and talk to us. And he made sure that at the time that during Casey's service, they sent so many flowers. But you know, they really it was just that every time you meet, it was all you heard the same story. Either he was helping you, or doing something in the community. You heard about it. We know that when he got shot that night, the witness said that, I guess when he came out and asked them why they come in there and did the maiming or whatever, and he was met by two guys, and they got into a tussle with them. But the witness says that when he was tussling, that he lost his balance, and as he lost his balance, some guys gathered around him, and when he tried to get up, they circulated around him, and they brought the gunman in, so the gunman was about where you were and I was. And then she said that Casey was knelt down, and she said as he was shooting him, she said that he started smiling at him, and he crossed his arm, and he kept it, and she said that he kept his eyes fixated on that person. And she said that when the police said when he was shot with that high velocity of a gun, he never did lose his balance until the end. That's when he kind of just fell over. But she said he never would take his eyes off of him. So that right there, I know that murderer has to still see that image, you know, see that image. But what happened was the detectives was saying that that guy didn't know my son, but that that how he just laid down his life with somebody else. Yeah.
And I remember that was, he was sticking up for one of his friends.
Yeah, he was sticking up because it was his female friend. She is the one that got assaulted when they came in there, and this girl broke a beer bottle and slit her face. Oh. And then she took another girl and she slit her throat. And so when Casey seen that, he went to her and said, hey, he went outside and said, hey, why did y'all do this? And that's when he was mad. These guys came around I guess the building, and got into a tussle with him.
You mentioned, you know, him at work. What exactly did he do there?
He worked in auto mechanic. He was one of the mechanics. He went to Francis Tuttle, and from there he was in the auto mechanic, and got a certificate through that. And so he worked in our fleet department at the hospital. Okay.
I imagine a hospital that big's got to have a pretty big fleet.
Yeah, they got a big fleet. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's about what I need, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add.
That we just, you know, it's just that we know one day we're going to hopefully get that phone call that said that, you know, that justice come for our son.
Hmm. Okay. Well, let me leave you with one of my cards, so if you think of anything else,
Okay.
just give me a call.
Okay. So how was Casey's name mentioned, or was it mentioned, or anything?
We've been putting together just kind of a database of all the homicides from 2008 to the end of last year, and going through a lot of the stories from that, you know, that we wrote at the time. And I came across this one a couple of days ago, and it just seemed, I mean, it seemed like a compelling story. We didn't, you know, since we wrote it a few days after, we didn't have the entire story.
Good job. Yeah.
And just while I got you, I didn't get your other kids' names.
Michael McClellan.
Is that youngest or?
That's the oldest. He's the oldest. That's McClellain.
Okay.
And the next one is same last name, Christopher.
Okay.
And Brittany, that's Brittany.
A-N-Y. Is that McClellan?
Her name is McClellan. And then me and my husband together. And the last one will be Elisha. That's Elisha Murphy.
And was he around when?
Yeah, she was 2.5.